What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another live stream on this beautiful Wednesday evening. I had to bring in the big guns this week, my man Uncle Weezy, to break down this championship versus championship matchup that we've got on Saturday at UFC 284, live from Australia. We've got two of the best fighters to ever do it, and Alexander Volkanovski stepping up as the current featherweight champion, going up 10 pounds to face the current and newly reigned lightweight champion Islam Makhachev. So it's going to be an awesome fight. And admittedly, you know, the main event of this card is carrying some of the weight of the rest of the 13 fights. There was a lot of like Australian, New Zealand talent that did fall off, and the matches got fizzled out. I believe even Robert Whittaker was supposed to be on this card at some point. But some newcomers, some exciting fights nonetheless, some good betting opportunities. I think Uncle Weezy and I are going to go over some of our common bets here, some unders, some violent spots in this card, but also talk about how much faith we truly have in some of these big favorites. So, Unc, how you doing this week, my man?
I'm doing good, man. This is the best card that we're going to see for a minute here. And, I mean, this main event is really something else. I mean, like number one and number two pound-for-pound best fighters on the planet, you know, facing each other here. So I'm really excited for that fight. And then, you know, there's a lot of good fights on, you know, you have to find the ones that you like angles on and, you know, that you think can finish inside the distance and stuff. And there's a lot of good prospects. There's a lot of finishers on this card, a lot of people making their debuts, some short notice, a lot of people making a very long trip from wherever it is that they live to down under to take these fights. So there's a lot of narrative things to talk about here, a lot of wide lines. We gotta, you know, avoid parlaying the wrong people this week. And if we do that, I think it's going to be a good week for a lot of people.
Yeah, we'll have to keep in mind, though, you know, there's always that look like, all right, all of these guys can't cover their minus 250, minus 300 and more money line. You know, one of these people is going to drop the ball. I've got a couple of ideas of which ones those might be. But, yeah, I mean, what better guy to bring in than Uncle Weezy MMA, a guy who's brought us just the most invaluable fight stats for this sport, stuff that I've been watching the sport forever and it just didn't exist. You know, we had CompuStrike and some other fight metric type of sites, but they didn't cover in detail all of the stuff that you've managed to mine from 2013 all the way through present day. And I think we all appreciate what you've done. And I have your Patreon in the description as well. So go ahead and check that out. I'm on there myself, you guys. It's an awesome tool to make money on fights and just to, you know, either validate, you know, the position that you see with your eyes when you watch tape or, you know, keep yourself off of making the wrong choices that the numbers don't back up. It's a really good tool. So awesome work. You keep on improving there, Uncle Weezy. So let's shout out the chat real fast before we jump into these 13 fights. Got my guy Cody, Blood Money MMA Bets in the house. Yeah, he's on this first shift now, man. So he's getting up really early, going to bed like an old man at early hours. But yeah, check out his breakdown. He already put one out over the weekend, and I think he does his live stream with Johnny K Picks tomorrow night. Got our guy MMA Propaholic in the house. And Jenna Marie, the certified gem of MMA Twitter. Always good to have you, Jenna Marie. Silky B asking, is 17 too many bets? I mean, it's a pay-per-view card. You know, that it might be, but you got to go hard on this one, you know? Especially if you're talking about like maybe even round-robining some of these picks together, trying to, you know, at least leave some chance that you're not picking that wrong, you know, minus 300 favorite if you're trying to get some value off of this card. I see Propaholic is 9. I think that's a lot. And yes, I am drinking this frozen Bombsicle C4, getting some caffeine back in. I am a registered caffeine addict. Have not gone to the you know, Caffeine Anonymous yet, but I drink pre-workout to go to work. I'll drink it going to the gym, and I'll cool down with it too, going back home from the gym. So I got to do all three. Sometimes even a light caffeine before I go to bed, just so my dreams are better and I'm ready to wake up in the morning. So I got our guy Ice Viking in the house. What's going on? Sicky does MMA. Oh, man, he's rallying. Have you seen this, Uncle Weezy? Sicky is on Twitter just rallying the troops behind a John Jones return. You know, I don't think anybody's been hyping up John Jones, you know, more than Sicky does MMA. I don't know. I got some strong opinions about that fight. Uncle, how do you feel about that fight?
I mean, I think
and John Jones. I mean, just like early lean. What's your opinion on that one?
Look, when I first heard that, I said, you know, I feel like Gon's actually going to pick him apart from distance. But then somebody said, well, how do you think Gon's going to deal with John Jones wrestling? And it didn't even occur to me because, you know, we've watched John do such great work from distance, be such a diverse, you know, great range managing striker that he can beat people from a distance. But Gane, being the natural heavyweight, I figured he would be faster, especially at the ages that they're at right now. But you add in the wrestling, man, and John Jones has got real wrestling that he doesn't really have to use that often. Man, if he uses that, I think that he could win this fight, So, I started on the Gane side, but I'm going to get on the John Jones side here, because if he does wrestle, John has got great Greco-Roman wrestling and great upper body trips, takedowns, stuff like that. It's going to be interesting to see how he does at heavyweight. I can't wait for that fight. That is
one of those fights where, man, betting wise is tough, right? Because you got a guy in John Jones who's now the older man by 3 years, coming off of a 3-year long layoff. God only knows if he even makes it to the octagon. How many times have we seen a John Jones fight get hyped up and 3 days before something happens and it doesn't even, it doesn't even take place. So I don't even know. But that's an interesting one. I can't wait to really dive into the research. And man, you're really digging through and blowing dust off the archives though for John Jones. It's been so long since we've seen the guy fight.
It's been a minute, dude. When I think of John Jones, I think of him just choking out Lyoto Machida, and Machida just falling to the ground like a sack of potatoes. When
that was December of 2011, dude. That was a long time ago. So
man, so long ago.
And now you got Cyril Gane at 32, the younger man by a few years. So we're going back in time looking at these John Jones highlights, but excited to see him back in there. Still probably the best fighter to ever have graced the cage. Lou Betya in the house. He's had a heavy day of recording content. Saw him do that live show over on WizBet's channel with the Four Horsemen over there. I caught that at the tail end of my workday. Alex Ramirez, good to see you taking notes in the chat. My guy Thomas got just my 2 cents. What's going on? And my guy Any Action Effie in the house. He'll be my guest for the live stream next week on Wednesday. So we're lucky to have him next week on the live stream. But without further ado, let's break into these 13 fights, because this is going to be the return of Zubaira Tukhugov taking on a newcomer in Elvis Brenner. So Tukhugov, one of these guys that comes in at lightweight now. He was a featherweight, but he botched the weight cut twice. So they're just pushing him up. It's been a year and a half since we've seen Tukhugov, who's a very good striker. He's one of these Team Khabib guys that trains at AKA. He does like to strike a lot more than those Dagestanis, and he's pretty reckless because he knows he can just take the fight to the mat and win control time there if need be. Very good decision machine, and fought some pretty high competition. But, because of USADA's suspension for 2 years, they came down on him pretty harsh because he jumped in the cage during that Conor and Khabib scuffle. He's had some suspensions and some time off, so it's been like 9 years of him in the UFC. He's fought 8 times, so not very active, but he's taken on a guy in Elvis Brenner as a short notice replacement, who's a submission or bust type of fighter as far as his record shows so far. What do you feel about this matchup? I'm thinking about Tukhugov inside the distance here to chop down that minus 600 money line favorite price tag on Tukhugov. I just don't think Brenner can get the submission here. He's finished 12 of his 13 fights. And if this gets extended, Tukhugov can grind out a decision or he can finish him. So you got any bets in this fight or any leans?
Definitely a lean. I'm waiting for all the props to open up because this is the first fight of the night. Some of those first round knockout props, that you got to wait until sometimes Thursday, Friday for them to open on FanDuel. But I'm looking at Zuba by first round KO, because if you look at the only finishes that he has in the UFC, he's sparking dudes in the first. It's Chavez and I forget who the other guy was that Aguilar, and he knocked out Aguilar in the first round. But he sparked Ramos in the first round, and Ramos, lasted. He sparked LaRon Murphy in the first round. He's really explosive early in fights, and Brenner has taken this on short notice. It was supposed to be somebody else fighting Zuba, and I like the fact that when I first researched this fight and created the prop template for this fight, it was listed at 45 everywhere. Yeah. So now they've moved this up to 155. And
I think it was 155 initially. I think Tapology just had it at 145, just based on Tukhugov being a featherweight. But I think since he was supposed to fight last fall, Lucas Almeida, and he botched the weight cut the day of. So I think they right there said, look, come on, how many times are you going to do this to us? Let's just make it, lightweight from here on.
Yeah. So, I think that Zuba, he's got a lot of power early in fights. And if he doesn't knock you out, then what he's going to do is he's going to use that wrestling to start trying to win minutes. And I just don't see him having any kind of finishing equity in the second or third round here. So I kind of feel like if you're on that Zuba by decision side, maybe that's a good way to look at it. But the way that I'm going to play it is I'm looking for a fat number on Zuba by first round knockout. And that's what I'm going to be looking to play. But I think the number on Bet Online is like plus 350 or plus 400. I'm looking for something bigger. It's
plus 350 on Bet Online, and I'm looking at DraftKings right now plus 330.
Yeah.
So
I'm waiting for FanDuel.
Yeah.
FanDuel puts out some fat props, and I need to get a Bet Rivers account too because they've been doing really good on props as well.
I need to do that as well. But I agree with that. I think that the recklessness of Tukhugov, and he's not like totally inaccurate, against some decent level of opponents like you mentioned. So against Elvis Brenner, did anything impress you on the Brenner side from the tape? I know it's limited tape and it's limited level of competition as well. But anything impress you with that?
I like that he's a shoot box Diego Lima guy, and you know that those dudes are going to go out there and just scrap. That what those guys are doing in the gym is like what goes on in the cage. They spar for real there. And, so those guys are always live. But when I looked at Brenner's losses on the regional scene, Gabriel Santos that he lost to, I think is an undefeated fighter or at least, maybe only one loss and is on a very long win streak. And Andreev, a wrestler, I think he lost that one in ACB. So, he's been he's been in some fights against some legit regional scene competition, but there's just not much there on the feet for me to suggest that he's going to be able to deal with Zuba on the feet. And then on the ground, I didn't see much in the way of offensive wrestling from Elvis to suggest that he's going to be able to take down Tukhugov and win minutes from top control here. Tukhugov has shown 100% takedown defense in the UFC, but it's only on 5 attempts, and I think it was all in one fight. I think it was a Felipe Nova fight or something like that too. So
that's odd. Really? Who's that fight?
Exactly. That's what I thought too. I'm like, Nova is the only guy that's trying to take this guy down, but
things must have been going pretty poorly for him. I didn't rewatch that fight, so
neither did I. But
that's surprising.
Yeah, and Daz File saying the under 2.5. I might try the fight ends in round 1 just to get the much fatter number and to get Zuba by his best win condition, or just Zuba by first round knockout. I think that's the way I'm going to be looking to play this one.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Elvis Brenner, just one last thing on that. Yeah, he overswings wildly, so I could see him getting countered and knocked out early as well. And he does a good job of softening up his opponents when he gets them on the mat, but it's going to be a tough task doing that to Tukhugov. So, Tukhugov would really have to make this, he'd really have to be slow, plotting, make mistakes. I don't know how he would end up on bottom in this one, but, he tends to make it close like the later the fight goes, right? Like he'll have an exciting first round, kind of an iffy second one, and then grind it back in his favor in round 3. But I don't think it's going to get that far. I agree with you. This should be done early. The under 2.5 in this one, looking at plus money, plus 105 on Bet Online even. So might not be a bad look in that one. I think the skill gap is pretty wide. So we're in agreement on that one. I got no action on that one. I wanted to. The money line's just even hard to parlay with him. It's minus 550, minus 600. Like, just not getting much out of that.
Yeah, if you're doing these degenerate parlays where you have to have every fight, and something, it wouldn't be bad to have Tukhugov money line. He should absolutely win this fight and win it easily. He's much better than this guy. But you got to be really conscious. I always say, if you wouldn't bet it straight, please don't parlay it.
Right, I try to follow that myself, and I've been way lighter in the parlays lately. It's been making things go a lot better, but I do have a couple parlays in this card, so I'm breaking my own rule. But up next, we have a featherweight fight now between Shane Young, who's returning after a long layoff, and we've got Blake Bilder, who's making his debut off the Contender Series success he had last season. So this is a fight where, man, I probably have the least amount of confidence, like the lowest read on this fight out of all 13. Just because Shane Young has seen such a spectrum of opponent, going to decision with Volkanovski very early on, having a couple of very, impressive fights striking-wise against, nobodies that have been cut, like, Rolando D, who hasn't been in there in forever, fellow striker, Austin Arnett, who hasn't been in there. So after that, he's looked pretty timid against some of the better opponents, and now he's been on a long layoff for like a leg injury. Blake Bilder, grappler, Shane Young, striker. How do you see this going down? Slight underdog price for Blake Bilder, and he's looked pretty good, not even having a loss in his record. I tend to go with the Shane Young side slightly, but with very little confidence. I just think he should have the overall well-rounded skills to, shut down the wrestling offense and just do the better work striking-wise. But do you think Blake Bilder has got a good shot at winning minutes, everywhere in this fight and just taking home a submission victory, a decision? How does this even end? I just have a hard time reading this fight.
I have a very hard time reading this fight. When I watched the tape on Shane Young, and I really kind of try to do as much of a deep dive because I haven't really analyzed the Shane Young fight for a minute,
Yeah, forgot he was even on the roster.
Yeah. In the Morales fight, I had known enough to know that, he just wasn't going to win minutes at range with a guy that hits as hard as Morales. So, I picked Morales, but, no big deal. He was a favorite. So Bilder, when you watch the tape on him, he's not like just cleaning dudes' clocks, man. I mean, he's a tough guy. He can come back from adversity. He's in there to fight. He trusts his chin. And some of these guys that trust their chin, they're not the best technical fighters, but they're fighters, right? And Bilder is a guy that the bet that I'm looking at for this fight that I just was DMing Brady about. I was like, I'm looking at the Blake Bilder finish only prop for this fight because he is a very opportunistic finisher and he's very durable. But Shane Young's very durable as well. So I kind of see this fight going to decision. I'm also looking at an over 2.5 at around minus 120 because Shane Young's only been finished once in his career in 6 losses. And Blake Bilder has never been finished. And he's been in a lot of bad spots too. Bilder's been knocked down a couple of times in a round before. He's come back from adversity. So both of these guys are scrappers. I think that playing the over 2.5 rounds at about minus 120 is good because it's a play on the Young and Bilder fact that it's a tight matchup. They're well matched, and that they're both durable. But I think that when you watch Bilder's tape, man, when he gets to the ground, he's dangerous there, man. This guy was going for gogoplatas in the second round of one of his fights. I think it might have been it's in my notes, but he was going for gogoplatas, and he got close on the first one. And then when he went back to it on the second one, he used it to sweep, and he actually wound up getting a sweep from a gogoplata, which was a weird thing.
It was that matchup against Buenafuente, right? Where he got knocked down super bad, and then managed to recover and do all of that afterwards.
Yeah, because I think he might have won the second round against Buenafuente, and then finished him in the third or something like that. I forget how that fight went, but so I think an over is not a bad play, but I also think if this thing does finish, it's Bilder because his submissions are really slick. He's going for inverted triangles, for gogoplatas, but he's also doing some more functional submissions that he's finishing fights with when he gets the dude's backs. He gets the dude's backs and gets rear naked chokes. He's very opportunistic. So that's the way I'm looking to play this fight. Either a Blake Bilder finish only prop or an over 2.5 and maybe even both.
Yeah, I like that. I like those plays. Again, I just don't have a whole lot of confidence because I don't know what Shane Young is going to show up. I don't really know much about the guy. And I do kind of blame Shane Young for making me have bad bets on Ludovic Klein because Ludovic Klein destroyed him. And then, next fight, he loses to Mike Girzano. Ludovic Klein loses to Nate Landwehr, So, yeah. So I was betting on him in those spots because I'm like, he destroyed Shane Young, who's a pretty good, kickboxer, trained with Volkanovski after he lost to him. Mm-hmm. But I just don't know. There's such a wide gap in between what we've seen from Shane Young and now this, almost 2-year-long layoff as well. Don't really know what's going to happen here. But I like those spots. I mean, all the points about Blake Bilder, we've talked about him more than we've talked about Shane Young because we've seen Blake Bilder recently, right? Like we've seen him actually compete and be scrappy. Shane Young, last time we saw him, I mean, he was super hesitant to even throw anything against Morales, which is not a good look. So it's the lowest confident pick for me. I am leading Young slightly. I believe that he is more talented than we've seen him, but God, I don't know. We'll see. And plus, he's still pretty young, right?
What's that?
He's still pretty young, right? 20.
Yeah, dude, he's only 29 and a half. So Shane Young could still be getting better, and he's a scrapper as it is. But what was I just going to say? All right, now I already forgot what I was just going to say, but no big deal.
Must have been a lie. That's what my grandma always says. If I forget something, she's like, "Oh, it must have been a lie." All right. But we're moving on to I got a bone to pick with you and Brady on this next fight with Loma Lookboonmee, who you guys always refer to as handsome, but you never talk about the handsome Elise Reed.
Yeah.
You know, Elise Reed, you never talk about how much of a knockout she is. But we
There's
got
levels.
women's. Yeah, there are levels. She's no Na Liang. We'll give it to her, but
yeah, Loma's got that Na Liang haircut, and she's dyeing it, and it's looking tight, man. I like it a lot.
Let me shout out the chat real fast. My guy Easy from the DFS Whispers. Go check out his channel. I got Carlos from ZJP UFC Bets. Also does content as well. Got a guy Tommy Unders in here. And the OG subscriber himself, my guy Jay, a.k.a. Border Rage. Always good to see you in here, my friend. But, women's strawweight bout, the only women's MMA bout on this card. Loma Lookboonmee taking on Elise Reed. Muay Thai striker in Loma taking on the rangy Taekwondo style of Elise Reed. Both women specialize in striking. Loma, a lot better at it, a lot more dangerous in my opinion. Elise Reed, she's looked improved in the last fight, but she was taking on a debuting fighter, as was Loma. But we've got Elise Reed as the plus 225 underdog, maybe even a little bit more on some books. Loma's moving from like minus 265 to minus 280 or more on some books. And she's always undersized, but she won't be giving up too much of a size disadvantage here. But yeah, I like her Muay Thai. She's a very good minute winner with that. Her grappling looks pretty good as well. When she wants to get the fight to the mat or ends up there, she can nullify that height discrepancy and start raining down elbows as we saw in her past fight. So I like Loma quite a bit. It's in my first parlay of the night. I've got her parlayed up with somebody else on the card. I got her money line at minus 265. Elise Reed, I'm not too worried about, to be honest, Weezy, because even her 2 wins in the UFC, where she's gone, I think, like 2-2 so far. The first was against Corey McKenna, where she probably would have lost if McKenna had a better game plan, right? If McKenna would have done what she did in the last minute of each round at the beginning, Elise Reed would have lost that fight last March. And then in her last fight against Super Melly, she basically, was en route to losing that fight if Martinez did not trip herself or fall on top of the cage or something. What happened there? Like at the end of the round, she tripped or lost her balance, and Elise Reed magically ended up on top of her for like 2 minutes. So that pretty much cost her that one. But opening of that fight, Elise Reed did sit her down with a big right cross. So is there something to be worried about with Elise Reed here? Is this a trap spot, betting on Loma or parlaying her up? What's her path to victory?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's always, touch and go when you're laying minus 260 on any female fighter, especially, and it's Loma. Loma's good. She's not great, man. She is not great. She's way undersized for the division. She puts herself in really bad spots on the ground regularly. But we don't have to really worry about that against Elise Reed. Elise Reed has a non-existent ground game. So I think the best place that you can exploit Loma Lookboonmee is on the ground, but Elise Reed's not doing that. So I really don't see her really, I just looked at the stats. Elise Reed has 3 takedowns, that surprises me, but it was in the Melly fight. She beat Super Melly. I cashed her on her there. She was like plus 140 or plus 150. Super Melly was like minus 170 going into that fight. And that was a striker versus striker matchup. And this is kind of a striker versus striker matchup, but where Loma really excels is in the clinch. And if she gets you in the clinch, she's meaner there. She lands good shots there, but her trips from the clinch are so good. It's like a combination of Muay Thai and Judo. And she does very well and is very efficient getting takedowns from that clinch. So I think as long as Loma's pressuring and throwing volume and doesn't walk onto a straight right from Elise Reed, which is her best, that's her best strike. Elise Reed does have a really nice straight right hand, but she stays away from that. And, Loma knows how to stay away from that. And then, gets into that clinch, works those Muay Thai trips, can land some elbows on top. I could even see her potentially getting a finish here because her ground pound's good. She lands some good elbows. She's mean in there. So I think that if she wants to get on top of Elise Reed, she can easily do that. And if she does that, I think she cruises to victory here. Styles make fights, and Elise Reed cannot really exploit where Loma's at her weakest. So I like Loma to win this one.
Yeah, it's interesting spot here that as dangerous as Loma's Muay Thai is, she's not gotten a finish in the UFC. I mean, she is undersized. It is women's strawweight. I'm sure they're. What's the finishing percentage for the women's strawweight class? Like, what's the
Women's
percentage of fights that
strawweight,
actually end inside the distance, or at least under 2.5?
it's usually right around 30%. According to my analytics on my prop template, my man, it is 31.14% that women's strawweight fights finish inside the distance for 3-round fights since the year 2013. And so that includes
Is that the lowest division? Is that like
What's
the
that?
lowest percentage out of all 12
Yeah,
weight classes? Is that the lowest?
Easily the lowest. I mean, the next lowest is 36% for women's bantamweight, and then after that, you're going up to 40%, 42%, 43%. Okay. So yeah, by far the lowest finishing division is women's strawweight.
So at least that makes sense. At least some things make sense, you know.
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It absolutely makes sense that there wouldn't be as much power down there.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So, yeah, the only times you've got that's why you start getting kind of worried when it's like, all right, the overs is juiced on this because it's not going to end that likely. You're going to have to worry about the judges' decisions, but I think Loma should do enough, striking per minute to get this done. So yeah, I mean, I'm right with Propaholic in the comments. Like, if Loma throws this one, I don't know, but he does have Loma parlayed with Tyson Pedro. I like that. We'll see. With and considering the fight to end by TKO plus 106. Yeah, I see a lot of people with Loma love this week. Not a whole lot with the Elise Reed love. Maybe that's why Loma's the handsome one here.
Yeah,
I saw my guy Wiz Betts in the house. I enjoyed your show quite a bit. So what's up, Wiz Betts? I got him on later. Me and Couch Warrior podcast at 10:30 Central Time tonight. We'll have our panel that Couch Warrior and I host during the pay-per-view week. So we'll have Wiz Betts and Lucrative as our guests tonight. So if you guys are up late, want to hear some more statistics, some more facts, some more leans from two very smart guys in Wiz Betts and Lucrative, hop over there. We'll be doing this all over again. And we got a fun fight up next as well. I mean, this is a spot where we've got the big favorite making his debut in Jack Jenkins. We got Don Shainis from America here making the long flight as the underdog. And this is Don Shainis' second time in the UFC. The first time it only lasted half a minute, unfortunately for Don. Was it Shameless Don Shainis? Is that his nickname?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah, he certainly has no shame taking this fight at all. I'm not too impressed with Don Shainis at this weight class. He seems like one of these guys that has to get the fight to the ground to employ that ground and pound. I mean, he'll even scrap you out for mount, but the competition level is very, very low for Don Shainis. But they're both finishers in this spot. So do you like the under 2.5 in this? Do you like the fight doesn't go in this matchup? Do you think Jack Jenkins at featherweight, even though it took him a while on the Contender Series to get the job done, do you think he does finish this fight over Don Shainis?
It's so hard to know because when you watch the regional scene footage on Shainis, I think the biggest hole in Don's game is that you can take him down and hold him down. So Jenkins, I think, can easily take this dude down. And if he doesn't get swept, because Shainis has got some really nice butterfly sweeps, where he gets on top. And then when he gets on top to you, he rains down ground and pound. He does really, really good work. But, it's against lower level competition. And it's the same thing for Jenkins. So now when you're up here at the UFC level, everybody that's coming into the UFC has got, like a 75% finish rate or above. So the fact that you have that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to finish at this level. But I mean, I think it's definitely possible for Jenkins. He should absolutely win this fight.
Mm-hmm.
There's massive holes in Don Shainis' game. First of all, he's way undersized. Second of all, the guy's a wild man. He's got very little technique. His striking, he's just throwing wild hooks. He's just trying to get in the range to take you down. And he just fights like a wild man. But this guy Jenkins has got really good movement. He's got nice boxing. He sets up his low leg kicks behind a really great jab. And he's showing that he can wrestle and win minutes too, as we saw in Dana White's Contender Series. So there's, he's a great prospect because it looks like he's UFC ready everywhere that you would need to be UFC ready, conditioning wise, defensively, wrestling, submission grappling, and then the striking, he's switching stances, he's finished 2 fights with low leg kicks. He finished the second Medina fight with low leg kicks. He finished the Petropolis fight with low leg kicks. I mean,
one of the best parts of his game for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, great prospect. Shainis has got huge holes in his game, making a long trip, and I don't think Shainis really has the opportunity to tell Dana or whoever calls him up, like, yeah, that's not a good fight for me.
Yeah.
Because, like, look, we brought you fucking in on short notice to fight Yusuf. You'll fight who we fucking tell you to fight. If we tell you to go to Timbuktu and fight the best fighter from Timbuktu, that's what you're going to fucking do. So they're sending them to fucking – they're sending them to Australia to lose to Jack Jenkins, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
I think it was the fight right before the Yusuf fight, the fight that Don Shainis had against a black guy, Bryce Picard, yeah, and he got dropped. Like, he got hurt badly in the early part of that fight, didn't he? Am I remembering the right fight? Like,
Dude, he gets hurt in a lot of fights.
Yeah, like, he got like dropped. Like, the fight was almost over, and then he came back and managed to knock that guy out, wildly on the feet, chase, like, running after him with his fists. So I just really think Don Shainis is so much more technical. Or Jack Jenkins is so much more technical than him. Yeah. It's just going to be a walk in the park. The unders I like in this spot. Like, I think the under 2.5 even is minus 175. So, you might be getting a bit of a discount on that just because Jack Jenkins, took a while in his last fight to get that finish. But this is a whole different level of opponent, in my opinion. So, I'm with Carlos in the chat here saying Jack Jenkins is his lock of the card. Yeah, I got him parlayed up in a 2-legger with somebody else in the card as well. So. Yeah, that's about all I could talk about on that one. Yeah, I think Jack Jenkins, I don't know where his ceiling is in the UFC. How far do you think he can go? This won't even be really good. The unfortunate part about this is, like, it's a layup fight, but it won't really tell us too much more than like a regional scene fight. You know what I mean?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't really tell us too much. And the one thing that bothered me about Jenkins on tape that I saw was there seemed to be some stretches of his fights where not much happened. And that's dangerous at the UFC level. If you're not fighting at home, these judges, oh my God, these judges are horrible, Patrick. They're horrible. None of these guys know anything about MMA, so you've really got to be active when you're in there. But yeah, we're going to find out. We're going to find out because the guy doesn't have any weaknesses in his game. And if he fights smart, whoever they match him up with, he should be able to find a path to win minutes. So I think that he's got a pretty decent ceiling. The only thing holding him back, in my opinion, is the size. He doesn't appear to be a big featherweight at all. And he's fighting one of the only featherweights in the UFC who's actually going to be smaller than him in Shainis, who's 5'6". I think Shainis could honestly make flyweight if he wanted to. And this dude's been fighting at lightweight and featherweight.
Yeah, he looks a little soft in the midsection some of the time, I mean, you feel like at featherweight, you should be a little bit more chiseled than that. He could probably make flyweight.
He's only 5'6", I mean, like, there's a lot of 5'6" flyweights. 5'7". I mean, Clayton Rodrigues is 5'7".
Yeah, right.
He's a flyweight,
Yeah, when you compare the physiques of these guys, they're just on the regional scene at the weight class, then you compare it to, like, a Davison Figueiredo at 125, like a giant flyweight like that.
Huge. Yeah,
the genetic difference is just you can see why one guy's champion caliber, one's not. But one thing I do like, I'm getting better at as a gambler here on mixed martial arts, is looking forward to spots like we talked about. Like, Jack Jenkins is taking on a guy who's not so good. If he destroys Don Shainis, maybe they, the odds makers will give him some respect, against somebody who doesn't deserve that kind of respect on the money line, right? Could be a good spot to fade him in the future. So trying to get better at looking forward and making notes on the page of Jack Jenkins for things like that. So maybe they open him up, against a credentialed UFC guy in the weight class, and he's, it's like an even money play when it shouldn't be.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and let me make one real quick point. When Jake Matthews beat Andre Fialho, he came in then Matthews in his next fight as a massive favorite against Matt Semmelsberger, right? Yeah. Go back and watch that Matthews Fialho fight. It looked like Fialho had food poisoning or some shit. You watch that fight and you're like, wow, Jake Matthews looked great. He didn't look great. Andre Fialho literally did nothing for the entire fight and didn't throw anything. So Matthews looked fantastic. He wound up standing in the pocket with nothing coming back his way. And if you do that, it's like working a fucking heavy bag. You're going to beat the shit out of that bag, and that bag is not going to land anything on you because it's not doing anything and it doesn't have arms. So you really got to be careful when you're paying up, when you're paying juice on a fighter. Go back and look at those fights and, like, who did they beat and how did the opponent look, as well as how did the fighter that you're looking to cap look. So important stuff.
You just had to use that example, Uncle Weezy, and just put me on blast. I'm pretty sure I ate chalk on what's his face. Would you just say?
I tried to get to a Semmelsberger bet. I knew that was
I was on the opposite side. I was on the Jake Matthews. I ate chalk.
I was on the Semmels, but I didn't pull the trigger either because Jake looked so good. And then after that fight, I was like, I knew Fialho was fucking. Like I started saying to myself, but it's things that you got to remind yourself. We learn from our mistakes, but we also learn from our wins too.
What's up to my guy, Mike, Couch Warrior Podcast in the house. I just shouted out our show that we're doing later, man. The pay-per-view week panel, one of my favorite shows. We get all four of us in there talking shit once again. So, let's move on to a very fun lightweight fight here. Jamie Mullarkey taking on Francisco Prado, another credentialed UFC guy of 6 fights in Jamie Mullarkey. Is a sizable favorite, like minus 270 or so over the debuting Francisco Prado, who's only 20 years old. The Brazilian is 11-0 with an 100% finish rate, 5 knockouts, 6 submissions for Francisco Prado, taking on Jamie Mullarkey, who is coming off of a very close decision win over Michael Johnson. That was, I believe, like last June or July. Exciting fight, split decision, went in the favor of Mullarkey. Both guys knocked down, both guys on wobbly legs. And Jamie Mullarkey is still only 28 years old. He is a giant lightweight fighter, just a big vanilla blanket of a man, 6 foot tall. Black belt in BJJ, black belt. Should that be his nickname?
The vanilla blanket. I love it. That's unique too. There's nobody called the vanilla blanket, so I think it's a great name. If you're a young up and coming wrestler and you're watching this show and you wanted to get into MMA, you just got the best possible nickname suggestion from my man Patrick right there.
But anyways, we're going on to Jamie Mullarkey. I think should get this job done. And this is one of the under spots that I took. I took the under 2.5 in this spot. I think it should be a finish spot because, again, 100% finish rate from Prado. He's fighting, and this is the guy he's Argentinian, right? Because I think it's the Argentinian regional scene that has that Samurai Fight House promotion that we've seen some other Argentinians come out of. And
Perez.
It was Perez, right? So it looks like a community center basement. They're just beating the shit out of people in there, and it's just it's like like any community center like this. It's like the Cesar Chavez Center downtown, where people play pickup games of basketball, and then sometimes they cage fight. You know what I mean? So that's where he's fighting. That's where he's gotten 11 wins professionally. Never been to a decision. And Mullarkey's this guy who can possibly get himself knocked out or finished early, but then come back and still play the zombie and overwhelm you. So I think that's what's going to happen here. I think Mullarkey can get this done at any point in the fight, but he could slip up too. Prado's got power. I mean, that's undeniable, right? Even if he's fighting bumps, he's still putting them out pretty cold if you watch the regional tape. So I got to side with Jamie Mullarkey. The money line is not great. It's about where I would line it, to be honest. Like it makes sense based off of the difference in experience, but I don't know if I want to get behind that price tag of Mullarkey when he could start off slow. He could get his head knocked off here, but give me Mullarkey like a round 2, round 3 a stoppage. How do you see this playing out? Any plays in the under in the spot?
Yeah, I got one unit on the under 1.5 rounds, 1.5 at plus 155 for this fight. Prado, 10 of his 11 pro fights have finished under 1.5 rounds. So the guy is clearly, a killer be killed fighter, and he's just killing. We don't know that he's a be killed fighter yet because he's never lost. But I also have a sneaking suspicion that this is Drew Dober cosplaying as an Argentinian 20-and-a-half-year-old. If you look at the picture on Capology, please tell me somebody's seen Prado and Dober in the same room at the same time. And
they do both have that
call
chin.
them a liar to their face. He looks exactly like Drew Dober. And I mean, this could be Dober trying to restart his career and pretend like he's 20. Because he's so handsome, he could actually pull that shit off. So, and if that's the case, I think Prado cleans Mullarkey's clock, but I don't know if I'm right about that. And if I'm not right about that, the problem that I'm having on the Prado side is that he hasn't beaten anybody. He's taking this fight on less than 10 days notice and making a 20-hour flight from Argentina to Australia and, making his UFC debut on short notice in front of a very hostile crowd and in front of a guy that's been in their returner, Brad Riddell, Fares Ziam, Michael Johnson.
Yeah.
This guy's a legit tested, good everywhere mixed martial artist. The completed product here is Jamie Mullarkey, and he's still only 28 and a half years old. So I'm picking Mullarkey to win this one by second round knockout. And I love that plus money on the under 1.5 here. Even if Prado makes it out of the first round, he's probably having a massive adrenaline dump. This is not some, community center in Buenos Aires. This is Perth, Australia. You've never been there before, Francisco Prado. It's a long ass flight, and they're not going to be friendly to you. They're going to be drunk. They're going to be screaming, you suck, and they're going to tell you that this Australian guy is going to kill you. So we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a fun fight. But when Prado throws, he throws with purpose and with power. So either way, I do see this fight finishing under 7.5 minutes, and I got one unit on it at plus 155.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, but it's the complete opposite. It's the minus 155 I paid on the under 2.5. So I got that extra round just in case it goes, but I have a feeling it won't. And just my 2 cents is saying here, I feel like there will be at least a moment, if not a couple of moments, where Mullarkey will not look like that minus 270 price tag. There'll be, but maybe he'll recover from that moment and take over. I'm hoping that's what happens here, but there will be that moment where he does not look like it. And you're, if you've got him parlayed up or you got him on the money line, you're going to be like, oh, what the hell is happening here? Is this going to be the parlay buster of the night? But I think he'll come back, play the zombie, and get this done. So we're in agreement there with the unders. That's not bad at all. And moving on to another spot where we've got a debuting fighter here. There's a lot of these debuting guys. Clayton Rodrigues is taking on Shannon Ross, who's making his debut here at flyweight. Clayton already made his debut and came up short in a split decision to CJ Vergara, who just played the perfect fight against Clayton Rodrigues, who is off the Contender Series in 2021. Looked very impressive. This guy's got a great array of skills on the feet. His Muay Thai and his striking looks great. His timing is on point. Distance management looks on point, but he's got the ground game as well. He can climb all over you and submit you. But the issue is CJ Vergara did not give Rodrigues a chance to get that going at all. He made him very hesitant, kept him on his back foot, and it was a close fight. I think ultimately Rodrigues should have won that fight, should have gotten his hand raised, but he made it close, and he did not pay for that. What was he, like a 3-1 favorite, 4-1 favorite against Vergara? So, either way, you deserve to lose. You did not cover that price tag. Shannon Ross, the guy we just saw in the last season, the Contender Series, get knocked out viciously, knocked down 3 times by Vinicius Salvador. And here's Shannon Ross taking on Rodrigues, since Ross is the hometown fighter here. They just needed him to kind of fill this spot. But big underdog. Can he pull this off, Uncle Weezy? Can he pull this off?
I think he can pull off getting his ass shaved, which is, I think, what's going to happen here. I think Clayton Rodrigues is going to shave Shannon Ross's ass and do it.
Glad to hear that. I feel the same way.
Look, I don't think Shannon belongs here, but he's a fighter. Some people just have that in them. They've just got that fighting spirit in their heart. And they can get punched in the face 3 times, and it just makes them angry and makes them want to come back harder. He's that kind of guy, but. Look, he's 33 years old, going on 34 in a couple of months. He's 12-6, and the guys that are beating him, Trash Can Makhachev, some other guys on the Australian regional scene. He just got beaten by Steve Urbeck recently, who's a good fighter.
That guy clubbed and subbed the shit out of him too. He knocked his ass out, and then
So. Ross is here because he showed tremendous heart, not because he showed tremendous skill. And when you see what Clayton did to Santo Curatolo at distance, it was pretty hard to watch. He kicked the shit out of Santo. He destroyed those legs, worked him over. Santo showed a lot of toughness in that fight, but he just couldn't get his wrestling going against Clayton. And then in the CJ Vergara fight, man, CJ just wouldn't fuck off. Remember that, dude? He was walking incredible forward like a zombie. What a great fight CJ fought there. And even in that fight, Clayton landed 81 strikes and CJ landed 71. Clayton landed 9.42 significant strikes at distance, but he only absorbed 6.05 per minute, for the time that they were at distance. So I think Clayton's better everywhere here. I think Shannon Ross is completely out of his depth. It's just not good enough at this level to be tough and durable. You've got to be able to offer some offense. That puts your opponent on your back foot. He just doesn't have that. I think Clayton's going to pick him apart and finish him.
I'd be very surprised if he can play a similar game plan, Shannon Ross, to what CJ Vergara did. I'd be very surprised. Vergara really just threw off his rhythm, which seemed to frustrate him. He just really didn't know what to do with it. And he still almost won the fight. At the end, he was able to grapple effectively and gain that control time and, make it close and probably win the favor of one of the judges. Do you think that there is a durability issue with Shannon Ross? Is that part of the issue here too? Or has he just gotten unlucky with some of the spots he's been in?
He's been finished in 3 of his 6 losses, but a lot of those came, the Urbeck loss, the Salvador loss, and then he also got I think he got submitted way 2012, 2013, so there's not even really tape on it. So but you look at Shannon Ross's wins. If he were to beat Clayton Rodrigues, that would be by far the best win of his career.
Yeah, that'd be pretty shocking. Out of all the big favorites, this is one of my more confident ones. I see my guy Danny Herc MMA saying he took Ross for the number. I mean, not a bad look when it's as big as it is at flyweight, kind of a volatile division. And we just saw Clayton last time not cover this price tag that he's once again set at. So I really don't hate the contrarian play on that one if you see a path for Ross here.
Betting is about the number, and so when you're getting those big plus money numbers, and you're capping that you've got a better percentage chance than what the implied probability that you're playing on the line. That's how you win long term at gambling.
Right. I'm kind of scoring, even though I like Rodrigues. I'm talking him up here. I am scoring from last time out. He didn't cover that price tag, so not playing him this time. But I think Shannon Ross does have that little bit of a durability issue here. I could see him getting finished. I don't hate the unders in this spot either, to be honest. But moving on,
Shannon Ross is still a full-time mechanic, Patrick. That's not a joke.
Is he really a full-time mechanic still?
Yeah, full-time mechanic when he fought on DWCS, and he said, if I get the contract, I can quit the job. Well, he didn't get the contract.
Well, you think he gave
he got knocked down 3 times and finished in the second round. So I'm guessing he's still working. He's still fixing cars.
Is he replacing somebody short notice for this fight? I can't remember.
No, but he's a hometown guy, and he showed all that guile and toughness, and a couple of fights dropped off. So I think that they brought him on the card.
Yeah, and after this split decision loss of one of the better prospects in Rodrigues, they're probably trying to prop him up here, right? To get him a win, maybe that could be the angle. I wonder if Shannon Ross after the Contender Series, he botched that. I wonder if he went back to the garage, then he got the phone call that he's going to be on this card. He gave an epic speech. He goes into the garage and just says, screw this, screw your oil change. I got a UFC contract. Fuck this. He just throws the wrench down and walks off.
Yeah, that's the best thing that you can do in life is violently quit a job. If you've ever done it before, you know what I'm talking about. It's a tremendously liberating feeling, to just be like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You're cool. Fuck you, I'm out. And you just get the hell out of there. It's great stuff.
Yeah, man. So I hope that maybe I will root for, without any stake on this fight, maybe I will root for Shannon Ross. Hopefully you can have that moment and put it on TikTok or whatever people do now when they quit a job. All right, moving on to the featherweight division once again. I think I'm going in order here. We got Josh Culibao versus Melsik Baghdasaryan. This is kind of the spot where everybody's split as far as the content that I've seen this week, people's opinions on the internet for this one. It is a close fight. It's another one of these fights where it's lower down on my list of confident picks. I don't have any plays in this fight. Josh Culibao, the Australian in this fight, Melsik Baghdasaryan, Armenian. Karate style fighter, that wide stance, in and out movement, very powerful. Melsik Baghdasaryan, a lot of first round finishes, 5 knockouts out of 7 wins for Melsik, who had a pretty, he was impressive on the Contender Series, even more impressive in that debut against Colin Anglin, who he destroyed. And then he had, an okay fight with Bruno Souza, who's like a fellow, kind of counter striker, as far as the karate style goes. One of those Machida pupils was Bruno Souza. But Josh Culibao, he's had the better competition, the better experience. He's still very young. He's 28 years old. But the guy's just never really impressing me that much. He'll win moments in the fight, like against Jourdain and people like that. But The Sung Woo Choi fight, he won moments, and he won those rounds based on knockdowns over Sung Woo Choi, who's more of a brawler than like a clean technical striker, as we found out. So I'm on the Melsik side for this one. I do like Melsik to win, probably by a decision in this fight, but I'm not really strongly convicted to it. I think the money line is set right towards a pick-em price tag. Do you got a stronger read on this fight, or at least if it goes over or under?
I thought I was going to be betting Culibao, and I'm not really impressed by Melsik. I think he's completely and totally predictable. He if you watch the tape on this guy, 85 to 90% of the strikes that he throws, if you think I'm kidding, go watch. It's all left hand, left leg. He does not use the right side of his body. He walks forward like a zombie.
I've noticed
he only throws straight lefts, and he throws big body kicks and big head kicks with that left leg. The right leg only does a push kick like 2 or 3 times around, and he maybe throws a jab every once in a while with that right hand. But he's a southpaw, walks forward like a zombie, throws everything with 100% force, and everything is meant to knock you out. He's very basic, but what he does is all really functional. It all works. He hits hard, and because he pressures, it's very difficult to use length or to use your technical ability using all your weapons. He's only using 2. He's only using his left hand and his left leg. So, you should be able to outdo him, but the way that he pressures people, it makes it very difficult to be technical because you're always on your back foot. But, and Culibao, if he could wrestle at all, I think that he would win this fight because he's way better conditioned.
Yeah, what's the stats on him wrestling? Is that a game plan that you think he would go to in this fight?
He's attempted 11 takedowns in his UFC career, and he's gotten 0 of them. That's rough.
Because that's when the tides kind of turned for Sung Woo Choi, and he started at the very end, he's like, shit, I'm getting outstruck. I'm getting beat to the big punches here. In round 3, he actually got the back, right? In the 3rd round, I think Sung Woo Choi got the back and started winning that part of the fight, and probably is what made it a split. But even then, I can't remember Culibao wrestling, right? Culibao is usually skirting on the outside and not really, that's the problem in this fight for me with Baghdasaryan. I think he can take the center, and I think Culibao will let him take the center. So at that point, it's like, is Melsik as predictable as you say he is, and can Culibao see that and beat him to the punch? That's a big possibility, and that's why I don't hate anybody taking the Culibao side. Like my guy Daz Files, everybody's favorite MMA community supporter in the house. I'm sure he's glad to have his home country hosting the fights this week, and that's pretty cool. He's got 5 units on the Culibao money line. So with no stake in this one, I'll just be rooting for Culibao for my guy Daz Files. How can you not?
It's a good fight. I think it's going to be standing most of the time. I think Melsik will be throwing with a little more power. I think Culibao will probably be a little bit longer, throwing with a little more precision, and a little more variety. And I think Culibao definitely wins the 3rd round here. Just don't like Melsik's conditioning because and it's not that necessarily he's got bad conditioning. It's just that when you throw 100% power into every single strike, you cannot keep that pace up for 15 minutes. It's just not, the human body can't do it. So he's going to slow down. And when he does, I think Josh is going to start putting it on him, but it's a very close fight. The line is exactly where it should be.
So you're leading slightly Josh Culibao, to clean up in round 3 and win the decision.
Slightly, yeah. But I think that 1st round can go either way, and I think that 2nd round can go either way. So yeah, if I think that the 1st and 2nd are close, and I think Culibao wins the 3rd, I gotta pick Culibao. But I thought I would get to a money line bet, Patrick. I'm not. I'm gonna sit back and I'm gonna enjoy this fight. It's a good fight. It's gonna be an exciting fight. 2 really good strikers. Can't wait.
Yeah, everybody in the live chat is on split sides of this too. I got my guy Dev, dude, who's on YouTube as well, predicting fights with Sell the Red. Go check out their channel. And he's on Melsik. We got my guy Any Action Effie on Melsik as well, and we got Danny and Daz on Culibao. Yep. So everybody's split on this one, and I agree it should be a pretty close fight. I'm excited for it though, and if you're like me, when you're looking at some of these, I try to avoid the odds when I'm breaking down fights, so I don't have any clouded vision of who's going to win. I try to do that, but at the same time, when I'm really trying to calculate bets right away and beat the line movement, sometimes my eyes are drawn to break down the fights that are there's minus 400s, minus 500s in this card. Where's an even money play where I can, bet 100 to win 100, you know? So maybe I'll start with that one. That's how I started with this on the fight night that I broke down. And yeah, I came back with nothing. I was just scratching my head. So
it was the first fight I broke down too, because I saw the line and I was like, man, Culibao fighting at home. Melsik's kind of basic.
Right.
He fades late. I think I'm going to bet Culibao. And then I watched the tape on Melsik. I'm like, oh, I'm betting Culibao. And then I watched tape on Culibao. I'm like, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just going to sit back and watch this one. It's a great fight.
Yeah, hopefully Culibao turns up in his home country here and makes some improvements. He is pretty young, but we got, speaking of guys in their home country here, Tyson Pedro coming back at 205 pounds, light heavyweight bout, taking on the returning Modestas Bukauskas, who's on officially his second stint in the UFC now after going 1-3 the first time around. He went back to Cage Warriors where he was fighting before the UFC, got the strap with a vicious round 4 knockout. Over like a guy in his late 30s, but it was still impressive nonetheless. Bukauskas is still only 28 years old, taking on Pedro here. Pedro's a sizable favorite after beating Ike Villanueva in round 1 by leg kicks and beating Harry Hunsucker by like a body kick or something like that in a couple of minutes. So 2 guys you'd expect him to beat, but it's been a while since we've seen a good performance from Tyson Pedro over a quality opponent. We're going all the way back to before his knee reconstruction, right? Like he lost to Shogun Rua. I remember that card in 2018. Almost killed. I mean, that was through no fault of his own. Like that was like Rua's last good performance, like his last zombie-like performance where he avoided death, stayed on his feet, and came back and won the fight. But before that, didn't he lost to OSP and then he won a fight before that, right? So it's been a long time since I've seen a win over somebody who's not Ike or Harry Hunsucker from Tyson Pedro, but the guy does have
that was Sapper Beg Sapper.
So it went pretty far back before we've seen like something meaningful from Tyson Pedro, which worries me with the money line the way it is. Whereas Bukauskas, the guy's not a bad striker. The guy's not like a bad 3-round fighter as well, And like I mentioned, his last fight was actually a 5-rounder where he won in the 4th. So Tyson Pedro, things are either going very well for him or they go very poorly in a hurry. For Pedro, who's more of a grappler than a striker, and all we've seen is striking in the past few fights. So where do you line up on this fight? I actually do have a bet on this one. I've got a half a unit shot on Bukauskas at plus 205. I'm not a big Bukauskas fan. I think his skill set is still limited at this weight class, but I just think if he can drag this like over the 1.5 round mark and avoid getting starched like Villanueva or Hunsucker, I think he can piece up Pedro on the feet, the later this goes. So where do you see this? Do you like Pedro in this spot?
Yeah, I do like Pedro, but I can't bet him because I just don't know what's going on with this kid. I mean, putting back-to-back losses against Oven St. Preux and Mauricio Shogun Rua in 2019 and 2018 is terrifying to me. Yeah. And then you take 3.5 years off. They botched his ACL surgery. They actually put his fucking ligament through the wrong hole in the knee.
Yeah, I saw him talking about it a couple of years ago.
I mean, come on, this poor guy, he's trying to recuperate and the surgeon blew it,
Yeah.
So you have all this time off and then you come back and you get 2 wins that mean less than nothing. Ike Villanueva and Harry Hunsucker, I mean, they're meaningless wins at this level. They tell you absolutely nothing. But I went and I watched, dude, that Modestas Bukauskas versus Lee Chadwick fight. Nobody should ever watch that fight. It was the worst. It was the worst. Nothing happened. I turned it off. I almost threw my remote through the television. I was like, why? It
was a bit of a struggle. It's a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, man. And then I couldn't even watch the Chuck Campbell fight because I'm like, I know what happened here. I know that nothing happened for 3 rounds and then Campbell got tired and Bukauskas beat him in the 4th because that's how Bukauskas wins a lot of his fights.
Very one strike at a time, just waiting for the perfect shot, and it eventually came against that guy. So
So the problem with Bukauskas is that he doesn't do anything. You can tell that you can tell his dad's a coach, right? Because his dad is his coach. He was raised in a gym. When you watch him strike, everything's straight down the pipe, just like you would be taught. Everything's crisp. He manages distance well. His conditioning is excellent. He's got not great takedown defense, but he has great Travis Brown elbows when you come in on a single leg, and he gets back up and he gets back up and he gets back up when you take him down, and then he wears you out and he finishes you late. But he has no urgency, and Tyson Pedro's got really underrated boxing. That's the thing. This guy's boxing has always been good. You watch him, he's got a really long jab, and when you see the 1-2s, everything's coming straight. He's probably just as good, if not better, of a kickboxer than Modestas Bukauskas because he throws more volume at range. That's the thing that I think we're going to see here is that Pedro is the much better grappler, and he's extremely dangerous on the ground, and he can get the fight there. But I think on the feet that this is close. So and you add to the fact that last fight, which went into the 4th round against Chuck Campbell, that happened on New Year's Eve. This is a 5-week turnaround after this guy just fought 4 rounds on New Year's Eve of 2022. I
didn't realize it was that recent. Damn.
Yeah, so that's a very quick turnaround to have to make another weight cut on short notice because Pedro had another bum opponent. He was supposed to fight Mingyang Zhang or something like that. So Modestas is taking this fight on short notice to get back into the UFC, but he has to fly to fucking Australia, from the United Kingdom. It's going to be and he's 6'3". You could barely fit Modestas Bukauskas on a jet anyway. Now he's going to be on a plane for 20 hours with his giant body.
He's trying to take a nap, and the drink cart lady's bumping his leg in the aisle.
Dude,
the whole 9 yards.
And that's smarts because I'm 6'2". My knee's always on the aisle. You get hit by that drink cart, man.
The drink cart's going to mess up his knee.
That's a bone bruise waiting to happen right there for Modestas. Oof. So short notice. He just fought 4 rounds 5 weeks ago. He's going to have to get on a plane and fly for 20 to 26 hours from the UK or Lithuania to Australia. And then he's going to have to make another weight cut. And in addition to that, he's low volume and he's not dangerous on the ground either. So I think it's Tyson Pedro's fight to win. But, dude, his wins recently, he didn't even do much against Ike Villanueva. That was actually a do-nothing fight for 4 minutes. And then he finished him because the first time he kicked Ike in the leg, Ike grimaced. You could tell, Ike's old and his knees are not holding up. And then he caught him there a couple more times, finished him right at the end of the round. But Tyson Pedro is very front-loaded. I think that he probably gets this done under 1.5, and I bet 1 unit on the under 1.5 at plus 117.
Dude, I wonder what
on DraftKings Sportsbook. I think between Tyson and Modestas's UFC fights, 2/3 of them in a 12-fight sample size have finished under 1.5 rounds, but we're paying 47% on the implied probability of the line. So it's a 20% gap there. Those are the kind of plays that I don't pass up.
I wonder what sometimes DraftKings has those. They sometimes they drop those later. They have the exact time, under 2, the under half of a round,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that would be a good spot if it was big plus money. I know Bovada even has those sometimes for these pay-per-view cards, under half of the first round. I could see Pedro starching Bukauskas, kind of like Jimmy Crute did to him. Because things either go, the under half of a round on Bovada is plus 450. I kind of want a little bit more than that, but that's about right. But you know what I mean? Things either go extremely well for him or they fall apart. So I have that half unit on Bukauskas in case they fall apart. But I could see Pedro in a lot of worlds getting that done very, very early. Both these guys have bum knees that they're recovering from. So I wonder if it's going to be a leg kicking battle, an oblique kicking battle between these two. See whose knee falls apart first. But I don't know. I feel like Tyson might turn up here in front of his home crowd. He seems... but again, if Pedro wins and he wins impressively, are we not going to be saying the same thing that we're saying about him now?
Who is he beating?
Who is he beating? A guy who is 1-5 now in the UFC in Bukauskas. So it's the problem with Pedro, man. He gets the best layup of opponents. It seems like so.
I want his manager if I make my return to combat sports, and it was not a triumphant run the first time with judo experience as a youngster, So. I want his manager. He's getting them really good fights.
Absolutely. And coming up next at the same weight class, we've got almost the similar opposition in a couple of ways here. Jimmy Crute returning to take on Alonzo Menifield. Again, Jimmy Crute had come back from a leg injury himself, came back and got knocked out by the current light heavyweight champion Jamal Hill very quickly. minute into round one. Alonzo Menifield, a fast starter as well, kind of like we just described Tyson Pedro could be in this fight. So Jimmy Crute, one of the best grapplers at light heavyweight I think exists. It's a shame that we don't get to see it more, but he is only 26 years old, so there's some room for him to grow into this weight class, get better, improve, and hopefully blend together some wrestling, because this guy has got some sloppy striking. It works for him sometimes, so if you could just get that fight to the mat, he could submit Alonzo Menifield here. And Alonzo Menifield tends to fade as the fight goes on, but is there a durability problem from Jimmy Crute? Is he a little bit chinny? I don't really know, so what are your feelings on this fight? Do you think Jimmy Crute does have that durability problem? Do you think he gets starched early by Menifield, or do you think he can take over this fight and put the grappling on Menifield?
Yeah, I know I'm saying it ad nauseum, Patrick, but flying from the United States to Australia is an absolute nightmare. If you know anybody,
is it really that bad?
You've done it?
I've never done it. Is it really that bad,
dude? Ask anybody that's done it. Santino DeFranco was saying on his podcast that like some of his guys wanted to fight on this card, and he was like, "Look, I promise you, if you get those fights, I am not going with you. I'm never going back there again."
Why can't you just take a nap? Why can't you just sleep for like a couple hours? Have a scotch and just fall asleep and take a nap. What's wrong with the flight?
Imagine if you're Alonzo Menifield. I mean, Alonzo Menifield is not. I mean, he's like your size, right? How do you do on a 3-hour flight, Patrick? Do you like it?
I just take a nap. I'm good. I can curl up in a small spot there against the window, or like I said, I can stretch out and man spread in the aisle seat. I fall right asleep. I wake up. It's nice and sunny in Vegas. I see the fights. I don't mind flying at all. I used to take trains to Las Vegas. 26 hours there, 36 back.
Oh, no kidding! Wow.
When I was a kid, I would take that because it was cheaper than the plane. So to see fights when I was a kid, I would take that from Chicago all the way to Arizona and then hitchhike over to Vegas. Yeah, I don't mind like I wasn't getting up and going to fight. I was going to sit my ass down and watch fights. So
exactly.
It's a bit of a difference. I wasn't cutting weight and then laying in the sauna all night, so I could see where it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, can you imagine like having to cut weight on a plane and you're on a plane for 20 hours? The flight from California to Hawaii is like 14 hours, and then from Hawaii to Australia it's like another 10.
I guess when these guys are like dehydrated as well, it probably brings a whole nother level of jet lag to it when they're cutting carbs and getting ready to sweat everything in their body out in the sauna. So
Alonzo Menifield's never fought outside the country before. And then the first time, you're not taking like a 4-hour flight to Mexico. You're not taking a 7-hour flight to Paris. You're getting on a flight that's going to be over 20 hours to Australia. Then you got to go to customs. And then once you're out of customs, then you fly from where you went and did the customs, which is like the first stop. Now you got to go to Perth, which is Western Australia. And that is something like a 7 or an 8-hour flight from where you landed in Sydney.
This has quickly become like a travel agent podcast here.
Dude, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. My girlfriend has got family in Australia, and they always talk about like, yeah, you have to stay there for like 3 weeks because it takes like a week just to get acclimated. 2 hemispheres, north to south and east to west. And then when you're a big dude like us, Patrick, being on a plane, trying to stretch out, if you're 6'3", 6'4", like some of these guys are, it's a nightmare, So it's not a good thing. And Alonzo Menifield's never fought outside the country. But Crute just makes horrible decisions in the cage. I mean, he didn't shoot on Anthony Smith, who's about as easy to take down as any 205er in the division. Didn't shoot until he got his legs shut down, by 2 calf kicks. So, and then he didn't shoot on Jamal Hill until he got sparked. He doesn't know where he's good. That's the problem. And he can get better. But I laid juice on Crute against Smitty. I laid juice on Crute because I thought he learned his lesson against Smitty, and I thought he fought smart against Jamal Hill. I was wrong on both, and it was dumb game plans. It wasn't the fact that Jimmy couldn't have taken those guys down, because he did. He even did it on one leg 3 times in less than a minute against Anthony Smith. So
it was the just a side note, that was the fight right where it opened up the main card, I believe. Like we saw the leg get destroyed of Jimmy Crute, and then we saw Chris Weidman top that right afterwards. Yep. He says, "Oh, you think your leg hurts? How about this?" Wham! Yep. Right to Uriah Hall's knee, split in half.
Uriah Hall won a fight without landing any strikes, any takedowns, or having any submission attempts.
He's the GOAT. He's the greatest of that's greatest of all time argument right there.
That really is. I mean, that is about as impressive as it gets. You know,
and
it's almost
betting
like
on him. That's probably the best bet anybody will ever make. Is if you bet Uriah Hall right there, that's the best bet you've ever made in your entire life.
Man, talk about a no sweat cash. You know,
yeah, I had money on Uriah Hall because I was just Chris Weidman's washed up, but he was more washed up than my wildest imagination that night.
But let's go over some numbers real quick here. Yeah. Alonzo Menifield has successfully defended 21 of 23 takedowns. That's 91.3% takedown defense. Alonzo Menifield has controlled his opponents 34.7% of the time, and he's been controlled 7% of the time. And even though he's out controlling his opponents at a 4.8 to 1 ratio, actually Alonzo Menifield's opponents have attempted twice as many takedowns as Alonzo has. So this mountain of a man is very difficult to take down and hold down. He's very difficult to win minutes in the clinch against because he's so strong there. And he's got one-punch knockout power at distance. I think I'd rather be on the Menifield side here, but I am not underestimating what a huge task it is for him to fight outside the country for the first time, fight the Australian in Australia after a 20-hour flight, and all that shit that you have to deal with there. And Crute has got good stand-up. He's got really good grappling, and he's got solid wrestling. So I think he can find different avenues to win minutes and moments here. I think he probably winds up getting the job done because there are so many narrative issues working against Menifield here. And then you have to look at Menifield's wins, right? There's nothing there. Not since like the Paul Craig win. I think he beat Paul Craig, right?
Who's that?
Menifield?
Yeah.
But since then, it's Fabio Charant, it's Askar Mozarov, it's a washed up Misha Serkinov, it's a 72-year-old Ed Herman who walked into there with a walker, and they're like, you can't use that.
And that fight got greasy as it went into the third
so
round, right?
Greasy.
Menifield slowed down so much, and he was actually getting boxed up. He had to use leg kicks the whole time to really win that one.
So yeah, man. I mean, I think it's a bad matchup for Crute stylistically because I think Crute really looks his best when he can wrestle and he can use his grappling. I think he's going to have a really hard time getting Menifield to the ground and working him. And if he can't do that, then you got to deal with Menifield's power on the feet. And Crute's just not that powerful. Not like Alonzo.
Right. Yeah, I was hoping that we get something nice and juicy on the Crute submission. It's only around like plus 255. You got to deal with, and I just feel like that would happen later in the fight. A lot could happen that round one. Strikes could go off in either guy's direction, but I just see more pass for Jimmy Crute. I think he's a good spot here, not on the money line, but just a good spot in general. I think he will get the job done. Younger man by quite a bit. Like you said, he's got the home field advantage here and just a more well-rounded skill set, even if this gets drug out late. So I am on the Crute side decently confidently. I don't have any plays on this one, though.
I got the under 1.5 on this one as well. 1.5 units minus 113, I think.
That's a good number. Yeah, I think it does happen that quickly. I think all of those options could happen. I think either guy could knock the other out in that time. I think, Crute he's shown he can get submissions in that amount of time as well. So I think that could happen there. But I think it goes poorly the more the clock goes in the favor of Jimmy Crute. So cruising along the main card here, we got 43 live viewers in the house. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Go check out the description and follow my guy, Uncle Weezy, the mastermind of all the statistics. Just a great guy all around. And I do have his Patreon in the description as well. I'm on there, and it's an awesome tool. So be sure to check that out. And coming up next, we might need to use your statistics for this fight because it is another closely lined fight on the money line. We got a heavyweight fight between Justin Tafa and Parker Porter, the only heavyweight fight on this card. And I got to say, Uncle Weezy, speaking of travel conditions, there's been some like high altitude training from Parker Porter. I think he was working for the Chinese, and I think our government shot him down. He was flying around in the sky. I'm surprised he's going to make it to the fight. I don't mean to get political, but I'm pretty sure we saw footage of Parker Porter spying on our country. Did we not?
We did. I try not to watch the news. I hate the news, but sometimes politics does work its way into the MMA lexicon, and this is one of the places.
Yeah. No, but it's not a giant balloon. It's Parker Porter. He's coming in here 37 years old, 6 foot tall, and plus money. He's like plus 105. moving towards this line has tightened up, so he's moving towards that even money play. I really do think that Parker Porter has a shot here because he's won decisions before, not over the best guys, but Parisian, Sherman, Alain Baudot. He's avoided that early knockout power that we have not really seen that from Justin Tafa anyways, right? So if Tafa's the narrative is he comes in here and sparks Parker Porter, that rarely happens. And when does Justin Tafa win minutes on the clock? Very rarely. He's 0-2 in decisions, right? So he arguably could have won that fight against Carlos Felipe, but again, a guy who's not on the roster anymore. So I'm on the Parker Porter side. Not enough to play it. I don't think I can get my money behind Porter in this spot, but I don't know. I'm tempted. What do the numbers say for the under 2.5? Because I'm tempted to play that. Even though the narrative is Tafa early, Parker late, all that aside, it just seems like a spot where two sloppy heavyweights at the limit can, one guy should boink the other and, fall over, right?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, the under 2.5 I got at minus 140 is what I'm showing. That's a 58.3% implied probability. And heavyweight fights go under 2.5 rounds 58% of the time, 58.86% of the time. So
right there.
It's fairly priced according to that benchmark. And then if we look at Tafa in the UFC and Porter in the UFC, 5 of their 10 combined UFC fights have finished under 2.5 rounds. So it's might even be a little bit overpriced at minus 140, that line. And I mean, I don't have faith in either one of these guys. The thought of laying juice on a Justin Tafa money line is laughable to me. I mean, like, these guys have got the worst wins that you'll ever see any heavyweight have. For Tafa, he beat Harry Hunsucker and Juan Adams. And you're like, wow, those are some bad wins, right? And then you look at Porter, it's not much better. I mean, it's better, but not much. Alan Baudot, 0-4 in the UFC. Chase Sherman, dude, he's racked up at 10 losses in the UFC at this point?
Between his 2 stints, yeah.
Yeah, and then Josh Parisian. And that was a close fight, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was like Parisian doing some work early, and then Porter rallied back. He came back and started racking up points on the board, had the better cardio.
But at least Porter's been in there with Chris Dawkins and Jailton Almeida, right? I mean, Tafa's losing to guys like Jorgen De Astro, Carlos Felipe, Jared Vandera boxed him up and cleanly beat him for 3 rounds. Justin Tafa shouldn't be here. I mean, I don't even know why he's in the UFC. How the fuck do you miss weight as a heavyweight? As a 29-year-old man, you're 6 foot. You call yourself an athlete, and you can't get to 266 pounds for a fucking professional fight? I mean, you got to be kidding me, dude. Wow. If you're laying money on Justin Tafa, take a long look in the mirror, man, because this guy sucks. And, I mean, I'm not saying Porter's great or anything, and I probably don't even get to a Porter money line bet here, but that's the side. At least Porter has won minutes on the ground before. We at least know what his ground game looks like.
Yeah, he's a more complete guy for sure.
Yeah, and he throws more volume too. If you look at Tafa at distance, he's throwing 12.5 distance strike attempts per minute when he's at distance. Porter at 17. So Porter's probably going to win the minutes on the feet here too, unless Tafa's finding his chin and landing big shots, eye-catching shots, which is certainly possible. But Tafa's terrible, man. This guy doesn't belong here. I don't even know why he was here in the first place. He was 3-0 on the regional scene, beating cab drivers and short order cooks. How this guy got a UFC contract?
I think it was probably like a called-in favor from Mark Hunt. I know they trained together.
Okay, that's probably what it was. Because
so they were hoping to have
5 straight juice heads.
Yeah, they were supposed to
you owe
have
me one. Put this bum in there.
Yeah, he was always complaining about that for a long time. I think it was after the Brock Lesnar embarrassment. He was always complaining about, fighting people on steroids when he's definitely probably on himself. It's always the guys that are saying the loudest, like, oh, this guy's doing this. Those guys are the most likely suspect of doing it.
They know that they're doing it.
Yeah, right. So
they buy from the same dealer.
Actually, speaking of Mark Hunt and Justin Tafa, the other guy was supposed to be on here, the new heavyweight, Junior Tafa was supposed to be on this card. He's a guy over there in Risen and Glory Kickboxing. He's beaten up some sumo wrestlers in Risen. I think he was supposed to make his debut on this card.
He was, yes.
And they all trained together.
I don't think Justin was on the card. It's weird. and then they made this fight after the junior fight dropped out. I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, but I see a lot of people in the comments. Prince of Mischief, what's going on, my friend? Even my guy Danny Herc MMA saying Porter decision. It seems like that is the side, but
yeah,
it's just when you look at these guys, we talk about how sloppy and like fat they are. It's just like I can't imagine that one of them doesn't fall over. But the problem is like sometimes it's such a sloppy heavyweight fight that they wear themselves out in round one. Neither guy falls, and then they just kind of like do that circling for the next 10 minutes and just try to survive. You know, kind of like what happened.
So
kind of like what happened with Felipe and Justin Tafa. That fight kind of played out that way as well. So yeah, I don't know.
It's a greasy fight. Don't have much money on this one.
Sicky does MMA, talking about Chris Barnett as well. Yeah, I mentioned in my breakdown on Monday for this card that one of the greatest things on the record of Tafa is him having the record, right? The first guy in heavyweight history to make the limit, like missed the limit by a pound. But then I totally forgot Chris Barnett also did that as well right after. So they're getting more and more obese. They might as well raise the limit to like 275. They need the UFC needs to work with these guys to just increase that heavyweight limit to 275.
Yeah, at least Barnett's got a personality and he's fun. I mean, I don't know what the hell Justin Tafa's doing here. He can't dance, No,
certainly not. So, all right, we are heading over to. Man, welterweight bout here between Jack Della Maddalena and Randy Brown. This is a very exciting fight. One of the ones I'm looking most forward to on the entire fight card because Jack Della has looked great. Contender Series guy who went to a 3-round decision with Angelusa, looked impressive, and now he's made quick work of his 2022, right? His first 3 fights in the UFC, all first-round finishes for all 3. So Randy Brown is a big test. He's another one of these physically gifted guys at the weight class, 6'3" with a huge reach. Slick kickboxer and pretty slick grappling as well for Randy Brown. So another good test for Jack Della to, he's faced a striker, he's faced a grappler and a Meave. He's, he fought Danny Roberts, who's a generalist, but, got the durability issues. So now this is like a chance for Jack Della to really show us what he's got. Can he strike, get in range? Can he hurt Randy Brown? Can he out grapple him even? A 14-fight veteran in Randy Brown. So they're still giving all the respect in the money line to Jack Della. He's a minus 300 favorite here. Randy Brown plus 250, the underdog. And even that being said, I still can't get to an underdog shot on Randy Brown here. I just think Jack Della is just too good, man. At 26 years old, I like his striking selection, and that's really where it comes down to for me is Randy Brown has that loose striking style. His hands are low. He baits you in. I just don't think he wants to play that game against Jack Della, who's going to stalk him, use knees and kicks from both sides of his body, probably time those dipping head movements of Randy Brown and just catch him at some point. So I don't know if he puts Randy Brown away, but I think he can definitely make an impact on the scorecards at least. So how do you see this fight playing out? And is there a shot that Randy Brown spoils the party here?
That would be surprising to me, but he's a 14-fight veteran, like you say, so you don't want to put anything past these guys. When I picture a guy that I would be willing to bet as an underdog against Della Maddalena, I want somebody that's going to wrestle, right? Because I've seen enough of Jack on the feet for me to think like, I don't know if there's a lot of guys in the division that are outstriking this guy at this point. He looks like a finished product on the feet. He's switching stances effortlessly. You watch that jab and it's so long, he can keep range with that, but he's also throwing in combination and he can do it from both stances. So he's the kind of guy that can mystify you. He can stand in front of you for a little bit, switch stances and kind of see where you're less comfortable defensively and then exploit that. And I just think that he's very, very technical on the feet. But we saw like Angelusa have him in a very deep arm triangle choke that, frankly, I thought he was going to have to tap from. Ramazan Ameev had him in a real deep choke. I think that if somebody's going to beat this guy, they're going to have to be able to grapple, get the fight there, keep it there, and take Jack in a place where we know that he's been submitted twice. He's been submitted once, knocked out once. His first 2 professional fights are his only losses.
What a streak since then.
13-fight win streak for Jack Della Maddalena, and he's finished 12 of them. And the only one he didn't finish was Angelusa, who he beat the hell out of for 3 rounds, but that dude just showed he's incredibly durable. So I like Jack here. I think he gets the job done. Randy Brown has only completed 7 takedowns in the UFC in 21 attempts in 14 fights. So he can't be taken seriously as a wrestler, and he can't be taken seriously as the kind of guy who's going to win a ton of minutes grappling. He's only winning 40% of the control time positions that he's been in the UFC, and he's only attempted 21 takedowns, while his opponents have attempted 42. So unless he can really find a way to frustrate Jack from distance and use that 5-inch reach advantage that he has, I think that that's a possibility. But when you watch the tape on Landy, he's not this great guy that wins 15-minute decisions, at distance striking range. His fights get close a lot, and then when he uses those long limbs to lock up submission attempts, he can have some success on the ground here, but at range, I think Jack's much better than him. And I can't count on Randy to get this thing into the grappling exchanges where those long limbs can maybe get him submissions that other guys can't get. So I got to believe Jack gets the job done here.
Yeah, it's one of those spots where, like you mentioned, the takedown and the grappling stats of Randy Brown, it's kind of deceiving, right? Because his submissions a lot of the time are like a standing choke he got. I believe it was like almost standing against Oliveira. He has just like those such long limbs. He can grab you from weird angles and box you up against the cage, then grab your neck and torque on it. So I don't see that happening with Jack Della. I think you're right. He's just too good at his movement and striking selection. His volume is very good. And Randy Brown, even in his last fight, he was a big favorite. Like I think he was a minus 300 against Trinaldo, right? And it wasn't a close fight, but it was still, you're not destroying Trinaldo when you really should be at that point. You should make it a little bit more decisive than that. There were some spots there where it looked like it was good, the tides would turn, right?
Yeah.
As somebody who had a lot of money on Randy Brown in that spot, it was like, I kind of wanted to be a little bit easier than that, but now Randy Brown finds himself against the minus 300 in turn. So, man, it's hard to cover that price tag, but if there's somebody to do it, it's Jack Della. So I do have him parlayed up with Jack Jenkins from earlier up on the prelims. So those are the two that I got together there.
Nice. That's a good parlay, dude.
Yeah, it's close to even. So just put a couple units on that. But got a lot of you guys joining the chat. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. And like I said, check out the description. I got my man Uncle Weezy's information there, as well as his Patreon, where he's got all the statistics you'll ever need. And man, we've done it, Weezy. We're moving on to some big bouts here on the main card. Got the interim featherweight championship up next between Yair Rodrigues and Josh Emmett. It's a fun matchup, right? It's, I know Josh Emmett has got the wrestling background. He is more of a wrestle boxer, one of these guys that's fallen in love with his power. And he does get a lot of knockdowns and wins a lot of minutes that way. But it is kind of like a striker versus striker matchup in a way, where you've got the clean counter-striking ability of Yair Rodrigues, that nice flashy kicking style against, just that headhunting boxing style of Josh Emmett. So do you see this fight playing out kind of the way that the Calvin Kattar fight and Josh Emmett one played out, where Josh is looking for the bigger moments? He'll be on the chase the whole time, and Yair's going to have to, pick him apart from the outside, be the sniper? Or do you see Josh Emmett, any indication he's going to use his wrestling in this spot, and any indication that Yair Rodrigues won't be able to deal with it, So what are your thoughts on this one right off the bat?
Yeah, I wish we could count on Josh Emmett to wrestle, because I think it would be worth, taking a shot on him as the dog here. But yeah, I mean, like it's pretty much been documented that this guy's got a hip injury, right? So is he going to wrestle? No.
Where'd that come from, by the way? Because I've seen those rumors, but I haven't.
I don't know. I
didn't dive into it.
Those kind of things. See, look. What would be surprising is if Josh Emmett wasn't seriously hurt going into this fight. This guy fought. Who was it? Was it Burgos with 2 torn ACLs?
Yeah.
Was it Burgos? Was that the fight?
He's a wild man, And
dude, he's crazy. Even when he made his debut against John Tuck, he blocked a kick with his hand, and Tuck kicked one of his fingers off, for Christ's sake. It was dangling. That. And he fought the rest of the round like that. Josh Emmett's always hurt. He's just a scrappy, tough dude. He will fight hurt. I mean, this guy literally fought with 2 torn ACLs and didn't tell anybody. So, yeah, he's hurt. I don't know if it's going to matter, though. He's very durable. He's very tough. And Yair Rodrigues, but Josh is going to have to pressure. He's going to have to pressure, because if he doesn't, Yair can really pick him apart. He's got a 1-inch reach advantage, but he's 5 inches taller. And he uses those kicks so well to maintain range that he might be getting his face touched up from a distance if he's unable to pressure this guy. So Josh is going to have to walk forward like a zombie, and he might walk onto something here. I think that Yair is just as likely to knock out Josh as Josh is likely to knock out Yair, because both of these guys have a ton of power. It's just Yair is more of a sniper, and Josh is more of like, I'm going to swing that bowling ball. And if it hits you once, you're going down. I mean, the guy is as powerful as a guy as we've seen at featherweight since Jeremy Stevens. So, or Conor McGregor for that matter, really. I mean, the guy's got that kind of power. So it's a great matchup here. I'm leaning Yair. He's much younger. He's just at a different place in his career. He's probably not hurt, and I think that he's going to be the better minute winner. I really liked what I saw from Yair on the feet against Max Holloway.
Yeah, that was a very telling fight to go back and rewatch. Because if it wasn't for Max Holloway switching up and, taking the fight to the mat, throwing that kind of wrinkle into the game, it would have been, probably a different result on the scorecards. I mean, that was a very shockingly close fight. The Brian Ortega fight, from what we saw in round one, I mean, Yair looked very good there as well. He looked very solid, confident in his ability moving forward. His timing was very good. I like a lot from Yair. It's tough to get a read on him because he, not in this fight because we saw him fight last year, but he just has fought so infrequently that it's been tough. But he's had enough solid performances where I do like him in this spot. It is one of the money lines that I did take when it was at minus 155, put a couple units on it. So I like him to win this fight quite a bit. And with 25 minutes to work, it's there's less of a chance that more of those rounds get stolen from the big moments of Emmett. Maybe he does land something Calvin Cater-ish, land something eye-popping. But that could happen in one round. It could happen in 2 rounds, and Yair could still win the majority of the fight in a 5-round fight. If this is a 3-round fight, it might be a different story. But I like the pace. And, we've seen Yair literally at the final buzzer, pull it out. So,
yeah,
you know what I mean? The guy... That was amazing. That was one of those fights where remember where you were when this happened. That was an incredible fight. But yeah, we're on the same side for this one for sure. But as far as the over under, I don't have a good lean on this. I lean Yair to win by decision. I lean that in this featherweight fight, but both of these guys, I wouldn't be surprised because Emmett's going to be moving forward. He could get sniped off, and you could have a devastating counter come his way. Likewise, the chin, Yair could try to slide out of the way of something and it actually closes the distance faster than he thinks. He could get knocked out. So I don't hate what Daz Files had in here. He had the under 4.5 at plus. Effie has got the under 4.5 at plus 145. I think Daz had it at slightly more money than that. I like both of those a lot. That's not a bad price at all for 2 guys that are dangerous. And like we're predicting here, probably a striking fight. And shout out to Mushroom MMA in the chat. What is going on, Mushroom? Always good to have you. Weezy, do you love Mushroom's videos he's been posting on Twitter or what? This guy is a great addition to the community here, man. He's always so excited. He gets me hyped up to tape the fights and hyped up for fight week. I love it.
If I had never known Mushroom before, the second I heard his voice, I would have said that dude's from Philly. That's what somebody from Philly sounds like, man. I mean, he just sums up everything about Philly and the excitement that he brings. I love the Mushroom logos and the violence poster that he has. He's a great addition to the community, man.
When he made his debut on the MMA Engine, and Lou and him were talking props, that was the most East Coast dialogue I've ever heard in my entire life.
Both of those guys, they sound like they smoke 7 packs of cigarettes a day. They got that Philly, Yeah.
You're catching secondhand testosterone just listening to him talk.
Yeah,
that's great. We got some Emmett love in the house. My guy Matt W in the chat loving the Emmett by KO. Definitely could happen, and I don't hate that under 4.5. So man, we've done it. The co-main event. So we're calling interim featherweight champion as Yair Rodrigues. Odd to hear that. It's Yair's always been one of those guys that's been around, but both of these guys have had performances, Emmett and Rodrigues, in their last fight where it left a lot to be desired. Right, Emmett cruising by that split decision to Cater. Yair, getting that shoulder, that kind of not a fluke, but still kind of a weird anticlimactic main event win in that Brian Ortega fight. So it'll be good to see.
An injury.
Yeah, and that was 2 weeks in a row at that point in the summer, right? We had the Aspinall one right after that. So, oof.
And then Rakic, like 3 weeks before the Aspinall one, he got hurt on a non-contact knee injury. Wow, that was a wild year, man. We had some 5th-round finishes in main events, like 2 or 3 of them where belts changed hands, and then we had 3 injuries in main events. It was a weird year.
And maybe in 2023 we'll have our champion versus champion matchup here in Islam Makhachev taking on Alexander Volkanovski at lightweight. We've got the champion at featherweight, Volkanovski, moving up to challenge Makhachev, who seems almost like the second coming of Khabib here with a little bit of improved striking, in my opinion. I like a lot from Makhachev. I like a lot from Volkanovski. You're looking at Volkanovski as one of the guys who's got one of the best significant strike outputs per minute over a huge sample size, undefeated in the UFC, taking on a guy at Makhachev who dominates the grappling, of course, and he's been hit the least. He's absorbed the least amount of strikes out of, I think, anybody in UFC history so far, over, again, a large sample size of fights. So Makhachev, the better finisher, Volkanovski, the better striker here. But is the size going to be an issue here? I've got a feeling it's going to be. Volkanovski, he's got that thing about him where he's very good at boxing. He's very good at getting in range for how short he is. He's got the nice long reach that'll be comparable here. But if you got to get in close with boxing range with Makhachev, you're opening yourself up to the body lock, right? If you play at range with Makhachev, his striking looks very good, as we saw with Oliveira. He's got to dive at legs. But for Volkanovski to do his work, he really has to get in close. And he's good at getting in and out, but, Makhachev is super fast as well. And I think he's going to lock up the body lock at some point in round 1, take this to the mat, and just start grinding. And he's very patient, doesn't give you any room to put your feet on the hips, no room to get up to your feet. He's okay with just grinding his head into your forehead, his forearm into your neck, just grinding you out. He's not really rushing things. And I think that's going to be the difference between Makhachev and some of the guys that Volkanovski has fought. And he's not even fought that many grapplers. So I'm really heavy on Makhachev here. Like, I think he's a great just a great play this week. Now, as far as the numbers go from a gambling perspective, plus 300 of Volkanovski is criminal. That's extremely disrespectful. When you look at the fight without numbers involved, I really just am, almost 10 out of 10 confident on Makhachev to get this done. But looking at the gambling perspective, looking at the numbers, plus 300 of Volkanovski, like that looks like the gambling side if you had to pick a side on the money line. But I'm going against that. I parlayed Makhachev with Loma, so that's out the window for me. But do you like the unders in this spot? Do you think Volkanovski has to be finish dependent? Do you think Makhachev locks up a submission? How do you see this fight playing out, Uncle Weezy?
I don't know how I see this playing out, because I think a lot of people are just assuming Islam's just going to destroy Volkanovski, but that's not, Alexander Volkanovski has cleaned out the featherweight division. Nobody's really even coming close to him right now. Now, has he seen the type of opponent at 145 like he's going to see up at 150? No, of course not. I mean, he's never faced some Dagestani wrestler, that trained with Khabib's dad since he was a child. And this guy's the best wrestler right now, functionally in the entire UFC. So, this is going to be a very unique challenge for Alex, but it's kind of weird. You look at a guy like Makhachev who's winning 85% of his control time positions, and he's got a 5.64 to 1 ratio of winning control time positions to losing them. Well, Volkanovski's better in both of those stats. Volkanovski's actually out-controlling his opponent 7.7 to 1, and he's winning 88.5% of the control time positions that he's in. So, it's one of those things. It's like this guy Volkanovski has done everything that you could ask of him. He's even mixed in takedowns and gotten 23 takedowns in 12 fights, which isn't, like 23 in 12 fights for Volkanovski, 27 in 13 fights for Islam. So if you look at like the grappling stats, like Volkanovski's kind of doing the same thing that Islam is. The difference is that Islam takes you down once and one of two things happens. Either the fight's over or the bell rings, and then the ref will peel them off of you, and then you'll go back out there for the second round, and it's going to happen again. And then it's going to happen again in the third round. And until you decide, like, holy shit, Islam Makhachev's not going to fuck off. All right, so I'm just going to maybe lift my chin up a little bit the next time he gets towards my back and just tap out. Because I don't want this guy on me for 25 minutes. Who wants that? Who wants to be smelling this dude's nutsack?
Sounds like hell.
You know?
Sounds like hell.
It would be a nightmare, dude. And, he's always got your wrist. You can never get a base. You can never get back up. And even when you do, he's already got the body lock on you when you get back up and you go for another ride.
And any break that he'll give you, any space that you have to move, you're eating an elbow. You're eating ground and pound. So if he does decide to give you an inch, it's because he's, slicing up with elbows in the mat as well. So, it's a tough spot.
It's a very, very tough spot for Alex.
But what's the path? What's the path for Volkanovski though? Like, does he have to? He would have to for 3 out of 5 rounds do more work on the feet before he gets taken down, right?
Spectacular lateral movement in and out. Never planning your feet for more time than it takes to throw that 1-2 and then back out. Big cage. Use all of it. Just don't let Islam pressure you. You have to be moving laterally. Don't let him cut off the cage. And then if you can make this a striking battle for more than 3 out of 5 rounds, you've got a chance. You're Alexander Volkanovski. You've been in there with guys that can be considered some of the best boxers that the sport has to offer. And you're not just beating them. You're making them look bad. He made Max look bad that last time, That was
the most impressive performance at featherweight, I think, just because of how good we know that Max Holloway is head and shoulders above most of the 145ers. And then Volk showed that he's head and shoulders above Max Holloway for a third time in a row. So pretty impressive there. I mean, the striking, though, from Makhachev, I do like. I don't think that it's I think it gets overlooked because of how efficient it is and how patient it is. He's not looking to throw 7 significant strikes per minute like Volk is. Mm-hmm. But what he does is he throws when he knows he's going to land. He throws to throw you off balance. His footwork is very good, always keeping that foot on the outside. He does very efficient work on the feet that I do like from Makhachev. So that's part of why I'm picking him in this fight so confidently. I just think it's what do you normally see when guys have a good striking output, but they're scared of the takedown? That output is very suppressed. They don't want to give any. I mean, luckily for Volkanovski, though, he is primarily a boxer, but he does like the high kick. So that'll probably have to go away. The leg kicks, might have to be less of a weapon, right? Because, Makhachev can probably grab that really fast. I don't know. I just think this is a tough test, especially, and then not to mention this up a weight class too. So I don't know. I honestly think Makhachev gets the submission at some point in the fight. I saw Herc MMA. I think he's very big on Volkanovski, which again I don't hate that from a gambling perspective. That's the smart side. But I think he was talking about he had the over 1.5 parlayed up. As far as the pacing goes, this fight, Weezy, can you see this being a little bit slow in the beginning part of the fight? Could be a staring contest for a bit, circling. Nobody wants to make the first mistake. Makhachev, he won't make the first mistake, right? He'll shoot in when he knows he can get it. But in the last fight, Oliveira started the fight very fast because he does that. This could be a spot where the over 1.5, this could only start getting active very late in the fight.
I don't mind that over 1.5.
Yeah.
Let me get the number on 5-round fights in the lightweight division. Go over 1.5 2/3 of the time. So it would be something you should expect to pay -200 for just on that benchmark. Mm-hmm. But, Islam's not getting a lot of first-round finishes, and certainly Volk isn't. So what is that over 1.5? Is it?
I'm looking at -325 on Bovada. That's steep, but I mean, if you're looking for something to bail, it looks like Danny here has got a bunch of money on Volkanovski, and this is his backup. This is his safety. It seems like from what he's been commenting. Let's see. I wonder if DraftKings is something better on that. But yeah, I mean, I feel like this could be a little bit slow and patient of a pace. Nobody, especially Volkanovski, not wanting to make that first mistake. Maybe we'll be forced to see Makhachev go in there and try to make the first mistake. But it goes back to my theory of this fight where I feel like Volkanovski, from what we're talking about, Weezy, has to have the perfect fight, execute it perfectly. Whereas I think Makhachev can kind of makes it be sloppy a little bit, use his size, get in range, clinch up, maybe eat a strike to just get that body lock when he needs to, and take the fight inevitably to the mat where he's probably going to dominate. So I had gotten Makhachev at that -360 number. It's still -380 for Makhachev on DraftKings. I think that's the lowest you can get it. And I'm trying to look for the rounds here. We're looking at fight to start round 2. DraftKings says -450. Fight to start round 3. minus 200. So yeah, it's still right around like that minus 300 some mark for the over 2.5, or the over 1.5. I'm sorry.
Yeah, fight starts round 2 about 78% of the time.
So they're making you pay for it. They know they're making you.
Yeah.
They know that each guy is tough. Neither of them have really suffered early defeat before, so they're making you pay for it.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I'm sorry. Do you have any plays in this fight? Anything at all?
No, nothing.
Okay.
I just can't do it right now. I looked into it. I tried to find some spots, but I feel like I know these guys really well, and you can't disrespect Volk at plus 300, and at the same time, what Islam Makhachev does in the cage is so dominant. It's so dominant, and he's the kind of guy like. If Islam goes out there and gets a takedown, right? Like let's say 40 seconds into the round, he gets a takedown and he wins that first round and he spends the rest of the round on top. That can break anybody. If you're a striker and you need the fight to stand and this guy takes you down and you realize, shit, if he takes me down, I'm never getting back up. It's
and if you fight
not going to happen.
Yeah, and whenever you fight to scramble, what happens is like those minor moments where like he lets you think you're going to get back up, then he'll advance position and lock up the choke. You know what I mean? So It's very interesting spots there. I think he played that game against the other great grappler, Thiago Moises. I think he like let him almost think he was going to escape, and then he sunk in the choke, I believe. So yeah, it just seems like it's on another level. So even with that steep money line price tag, again, I don't condone. Like I think that's not priced appropriately. I think the value all falls on mathematically for Volkanovski. And if you make smart bets like that over time, it'll probably work out in your favor. I just don't think this is the one. So this might be a good spot to stay off of if you don't have like a good read on it and just watch as a fan, because this is going to be a really fun. Is this the first championship versus championship matchup we've had since Adesanya going up?
Yeah, I mean, since Adesanya Blachowicz, right?
I don't think so. This is like the first one in like a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is a great fight. I mean, I can't wait for this fight. Islam Makhachev, I think, is the best fighter in the world right now. And what Volk has done in the featherweight division is something as dominant as we've seen anybody be in the featherweight division since Jose Aldo way back in the day. So this is fantastic. I can't wait for this fight. It's not one I feel compelled to have bets on.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the smart way to go about it because both guys are so dominant. It's going to be so much fun to see this. Man, we would see the third person ever to have fourth person to have 2 belts if Volkanovski, because we had Amanda Nunes, we had DC, and we had Connor. This would be the fourth one, right? To have 2 belts. There was so long in the history of this sport where like the championship versus championship matchups were so rare, and now it seemed like we had like one every 6 months for a while. So I don't know. Maybe it's because they added weight classes. I don't know. There was just a while where like that never happened. Like, what was the first one even? I think BJ Penn and GSP. I think it was the first one ever.
I think so, because BJ went up, right, to fight him at 170.
Yeah. In the rematch. So, yeah, I don't know. So it's always a monumental thing. It still is rare, for that to happen. So, boy, I'm wishing Volkanovski all the luck, but I do have money on Makhachev here, a parlay, and I might get on that under 4.5 just to cover both sides, So I think one guy's going to slip up here. I think it's going to be Volkanovski. But either way, you guys, all 39 of you in the chat, it has been a pleasure breaking down this epic pay-per-view with you. Again, I will be with Couch Warrior Podcast on his show later on tonight at in about a half an hour, about 10:30 Central Time. So that'll be with WizBets and Lucrative. So go ahead and check that out on Couch Warrior's show. And Uncle Weezy, let the people know where they can find you the rest of the week. And it's been a pleasure having you once again, my friend. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Patrick. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody in the chat that's been hanging out with us here tonight. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy. I do Just the Tip full card breakdown every Tuesday night, 10 o'clock Central Time. I'm usually doing Ask Weezy right now at 10 o'clock, but I've already talked enough fights today. I'm taking the rest of the night off. Look for a greasy 4-leg parlay coming out tomorrow on my channel. And you can find me on Pub Sports Radio every Sunday for Sunday for Stat Diggers, Wednesday for the DFS show, Saturday for the watch along. You can also find me on the MMA Engine YouTube channel with the guys. Basically anywhere people are breaking down fights on YouTube, you're probably going to find your Uncle Weezy there.
Yeah, nobody can get enough of Uncle Weezy, man. You're the guy with all the stats. I can ask you about divisional finish rates at the blink of an eye, and you've got it ready for me. So just saving us money left and right. So, all right, you guys, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Check out Uncle Weezy's stuff in the description. I will talk fights with you very, very soon. Enjoy the fights. Cheers.